Welcome to Pixel Therapy, the video game podcast where we look at the games we played through the lens of the player, where what you play is just as important as how you play it, and where emotional intelligence is a critical stat. I'm your co-host, Jamie, pronouns she, they.
And I'm your co-host, Spencer, pronouns they, them.
And this is Pixel Therapy. Let's start, as we always do, with our Patreon shoutouts. This is our special thank you to everyone who's subscribed at our Patreon name in the credits tier. So specifically, this is specifically for the month of February. So that's a very big thank you to Lindsay, Pimhatai, CD Mess, Ava, Alexis, and Thomas. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the crew for
MVPs.
your continued support. And thank you to everybody who signs up for free over on the Patreon. We always get at least a few folks a month. And it's just...
I love you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for caring enough to take those few minutes to follow us there and keep up with what we're doing. We really appriciate it. Remember,
sorry we said we'd start our stream 30 minutes ago.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, whoopsies.
We're on depressed gay people time, okay? You get it.
Yeah. No, we're literally, we're chatting, trying not to cry, trying not to...
Y'all know how it is.
Just shut the computer down and crawl into bed. And I was like, oh, Spencer, did you tell people a time that we were going to start the stream? And they were like, yeah, like half an hour ago. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, we should get started. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. We are not professionals. We're not professionals. We just do this for fun.
Because we love you.
Yeah, that too. Remember, if you want to get your name in the credits, you can hop on over to patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can subscribe for free to stay up to date on all things Pixel Therapy, or for as little as $2 a month, you can get access to our Patreon exclusive monthly bonus episodes. For our February bonus episode, we chatted about the Span board game series. We chatted about Spencer's foray into Diablo 4. And we reviewed Techno Banter, which was one of the standout games that we got to see at PAX West last year. It was a fun little bonus episode. Should go check it out. Talked about hot rats. And if you want to know the context on that, you're going to have to pay the $2. If you're looking for other ways to support the show, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. And you can also check out and subscribe to the Pixel Therapy Pod YouTube channel, where our unhinged Let's Play of Life is Strange Double Exposure has finally concluded. We'll be picking back up with Sunday game streams in a couple of weeks. So be sure to head over to youtube.com/@pixeltherapypod and click that bell icon over there, and you'll get notified whenever we go live here, even if it's 30 minutes late. And of course, after all that, know that no matter how you choose to engage with us, we appreciate you being here all the same. So thank you. It's time now to get cozy, pull up an armchair, and feel free to lie down on the couch, and let's talk about our feelings. Spencer, to whatever extent you would like to answer this question, please tell me, how are you today?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah. Just hanging in there. Cat poster in the office style.
Yeah.
My little paws holding on to that tree branch called life.
Like Mufasa.
Like
hanging
Mufasa.
over the cliff.
Just like that.
Just
and
like that.
The world is Scar's claws digging into the tops of my paws, threatening to release me down into the hyenas below.
And I'm Simba over on the side going, no! Dad, no!
So, yeah. Please join us on Patreon for our live reenactment of The Lion King.
Oh my God. Let's do it. Why not? We're just saying we're probably going to need to find other things to do with our day job, our day job time once more and more of these.
Once Trump makes it illegal to be
just, someone who's not a cis man working. Working a job as we approach The Handmaid's Tale.
As it becomes more real with each passing moment.
Please follow my Etsy shop. Okay.
I'm fine.
You're fine. Yeah, I'm also fine. We're both fine. We're both doing well. We're pictures of mental health. My ulcer is increasing in size and frequency.
No.
But other than that, now, honestly, this week mentally for me was a lot better than last week, so I will take that as a win.
Mhm.
For very little reason other than I just, I don't know, just was. And I got a new phone. My old
Ooh,
phone kind of stopped doing all the things that I wanted it to do. It was,
cool.
like, 6 years old, so
Nice.
that's exciting. Although
Mm.
I don't do change very well, so I'm adjusting to a new phone in my
Nothing makes
life.
you feel old like getting a new phone and
I
being like,
know, I know.
"What's this do?"
And, like, they're both Samsung Galaxies. They fucking move the buttons around. Why? Why?
Those jerks.
Why'd they move the buttons? It was probably more gradual than what I'm experiencing because I skipped several generations, but
Yeah.
why'd they move the buttons around?
Why'd they do that?
It's just confusing. And, it's, like, too big for my little tiny baby hands.
You do have small
Phones
hands.
I've got very small hands.
They're
Very
dainty and
teeny tiny.
adorable.
Ah,
Um,
thank
I got a new
you.
toy
Yeah, you got
myself.
okay, tell me about it.
Um, it's a Cricut machine. It's not a printer. I've been
Okay.
informed that
Wait,
don't
what?
call it that or the
Yeah.
Cricut people will get mad at you. It's a device that
Big.
prints, like,
But not it's
it
not a
cuts
printer.
stuff.
Not a printer.
Not a
Just a
printer.
device that prints.
It's it cuts
Okay.
things.
Okay.
Uh so I
What
leaned
sort of things?
into my, like, Midwestern mom, like, era,
Uh-huh.
and
Well, I think
it
we're all gonna have to build these skills soon.
yeah, we will. We're all gonna just be selling crafts to each other
It's
on
like
the
that
internet.
Colt made butter from scratch the other week. I'm like, that might
Wow.
be a thing we need to learn how
Hey,
to do.
pioneer woman. Look at him. Um, but the Cricut is used to make stickers and
Okay.
decals and things like that.
Okay.
I'm using it to make this is so niche, I'm sorry, everyone, but I like to make stained glass
Mhm.
panels as a hobby.
You're quite good at it, I must
Thank
say. Or
you.
if I can say, if
Aw,
I could say.
that's sweet. I
Yeah,
appreciate
it's
that
good. I've told you
praise.
this before.
I like to hear it in front of
Okay.
thousands of people.
Yeah, okay, thousands. It's generous.
um, um, okay, so to cut glass, you have to you draw your pattern that you're gonna
Uh-huh.
then translate into glass, and then typically it's like you've gotta either, like, cut that out of paper and then glue it onto the glass to create a stencil for you to cut out of the glass, and
Yep.
so I'm using the Cricut to I, like, draw my designs digitally, and then I have the Cricut print out the pattern and then cut it all out, so then I basically have stickers that I can just peel off and stick onto the glass without having to spend, like, hours drawing and tracing and cutting. So, I know
Dang.
that's probably the most boring thing everyone has heard this week, but, like,
I didn't think it was.
it's revolutionizing the craft for me.
So, this just increases the speed with which you can complete a project. Yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's really
So
cool.
and now
Are
I'm
you
working on
doing
a mhm.
I was just I know you went and did some stained glass what's the term for it? You did some stained glassing? Is there
I
a term for
did
it?
that. I
Some
glassed it
stained
up.
you
I
stained
glassed all over the
you
place.
stained it?
Stained it
You
all
stained glassed
bad. I
it?
got stains, they won't come out.
Is there a term for it or
I don't know,
not?
I
Okay.
made stained glass.
You okay. So you were making some stained glass, like, a week ago. Are
Uh-huh.
you now that you have the Cricut, are you
Yes.
this was more ad hoc, you were kinda doing this periodically. Are you
Yes.
having, like, a more dedicated stained glass practice now in
I
these
am
trying
trying
times?
in these trying times, yeah. I mean, I am trying to go into the studio more.
Uh-huh.
I live in the middle of nowhere, so it's like 30 minutes from my house. So I'm trying
Mhm.
to like make time and be like, okay, I'm gonna schedule this. I have an accountability buddy who who is also into it. And so we've
Okay.
made pacts to like go together because I
Uh-huh.
have no willpower. So having someone else who's also
Yeah.
like, waiting for me to show up means that, like, there's a 90 plus 90% chance I'm gonna actually show up
Yeah.
there. So, that's helped. So, at least
Mhm.
for the past few weeks, I have been going, like, kinda, like, every other week, something
Okay.
like that. So I did make so, like I guess this is video game related. I made a hex core a corrupted hex core out
You
of
look
stained
great.
glass a couple weeks ago. Thanks,
Yeah.
buddy. I
Yeah.
was like, there's only one person I can send this to.
Yeah, well, so you texted me and you were like, "Do you know what this is?" And I immediately
Yeah.
recognized. I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the
like,
corrupted hex core. It's so good."
validated.
And you were like, "Everyone else thought it was a spider web," and I'm like, "Who the fuck were you asking?" Like strangers on the street? Like who?
What is this? Yeah, people at the studio were like,
Okay.
"Oh, nice spider web," and I was like,
Yeah.
"You don't know. You just
You don't
no
fucking
no
know.
one knows that."
Go home, watch
the
2
corrupted
seasons of
hex
Arcane, and
core.
then get fucking
Get
back to
back to
me.
me.
Then fucking get back to me.
So now I'm working on something. I'm way in over my head. I don't know if any of y'all watch Severance,
Uh-huh.
but I'm translating a still from the show Severance into glass.
Ooh.
And I'm like, I was starting to cut the glass yesterday. I was like, girl, I don't know how we're gonna get through this.
Wait, what well, maybe it would be is it spoilery to say what frame it was? Like what it is that you're translating?
I'll say it's from the episode. I think the episode is called Woe's Hollow. I think it's episode 4.
Mhm.
And there's a scene where our 4 besties are all standing in a line wearing these crazy black fluffy coats and
Yeah.
hats.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of standing in a row.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very iconic shot.
Yeah, it was used in a lot of the marketing and stuff for
Yeah,
that
so
episode
y'all
too.
will have seen it. That's not a spoiler.
Yeah. So
That's
you're
that
turning that
scene.
into like how big is it?
It's gonna be like 22 inches across.
Oh shit.
'Cause yeah, I'm insane. I don't know what I was thinking, but if I get through
I think
it,
you're a genius. I think that's gonna be cool. It's gonna be
I'll keep
great.
y'all posted.
Yeah.
If I manage to complete it, I will show it on a stream in the future. Just
Okay.
give you guys a little weeksy.
Yeah. Well, I already told you this, but for the sake of the podcast, I'll share that, you
Yeah.
know, I was fucking around with some clay around the holidays,
Mhm.
made Spencer and their partner gifts for Christmas
They're a
out of
savant.
clay. An idiot savant? That's a thing, right? Maybe that one. No, but yeah, so I after I made the stuff for y'all, I was like, oh, I should maybe like actually look up how to do this because I was just like fucking slapping some clay together and then painting it. So I looked up how to do it. I'm trying to do some shit for real, but I'm making a
Nice.
little no face from Spirited Away, and I did the first I actually sculpted stuff this weekend and used the new thing I learned. Just like so basic, but like
What's the new thing you
after
learned?
you sculpt it,
Uh-huh.
so I'm working with air dry clay. So after I
Mhm.
sculpt it, you know, and you get like these little like cracks and stuff in the clay, just little folds and you know, texture wise might not be perfect because you're doing it with your hands. So you take a paintbrush, you just dip it in water and you do like a coat of like water over the
Mm.
outside of it to kind of help smooth out all those edges and stuff. So I did that. But
Okay.
yeah, I made like a little no face character from Spirited Away sitting in a little bathtub. I was like, I looked something up online. You can get like a
Mhm.
little glass figurine of this, and I basically like copied that and tried
Nice.
sculpting it. But I'm gonna go the whole, you know, after it dries for a few days, I'm gonna try sanding it.
Mhm.
Sand it,
Ooh.
then I'm gonna paint it, and then
Nice.
I'm gonna do like a resin layer on it to like preserve
Nice.
it and make it a little shiny and nice. So I'm excited about this. So
Nice.
keep your eyes and ears out. Pixel Therapy craft store coming soon.
It's coming.
we're
We'll add
gonna
a
need
physical store originals to our Patreon. You can shop
yeah.
them right from the
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna need that other source of income once we are laid off.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you want to talk about some video games?
Oh, that's probably a good idea.
Maybe the specific game that we played for this episode. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh,
You wanna talk about that with me?
sure.
Yeah, does that sound good? Okay. Yeah, so Spencer and I played Citizen Sleeper 2, Starward Vector. That's our topic of the show today. This Starward Vector, which released on all platforms a few weeks ago at the end of January, is the follow-up to 2022's Citizen Sleeper. Long-term fans might recall that we did an episode on that back in 2022. And this was impressive to me. We recorded that episode 5 days. That episode released 5 days after Citizen Sleeper supposedly came out.
Oh,
The
wow. We
episode
did that
released on
fast.
May 10th, 2022, and the game was released on May 5th, 2022.
The
I don't
first one
know.
was shorter though, wasn't
It
it?
was shorter, but that's still an impressive
Sus.
it's an impressive turnaround that we did there. Um, but yeah, if you want to go back and check it out, that episode is called How Citizen Sleeper Sows Hope at the Edge of Space and Knowing Your Nose with Courtney Terry. And yeah, I can't believe that's from 2022, fucking
Wow.
almost 3 years ago.
A simpler time.
Yeah, it should somehow that was a simpler time. But anyway, so both of these that 2022 Citizen Sleeper just a few weeks ago, Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. Both of the games are the work of Gareth Damian Martin and their one-person game development studio Jump Over the Age. Both games are dice-driven role-playing experiences with a heavy focus on narrative, telling an intertwined but not continuous story about survival and humanity at the edges of the settled galaxy. Players embody a main character who is a sleeper, which is a type of android built to complete labor contracts, while imbued with the copied consciousness of a living human who's essentially in a cryogenic storage somewhere, sleeping while their debts are being paid off by the android. However, in both games, the titular sleeper that you play as has escaped the confines of their labor contract, and they're trying to make a life for themselves instead.
I have a
Both
question.
yeah, go for it.
So, like, in both of these games, the sleeper, as you just mentioned, has, like, escaped and they're,
Mhm,
like, roaming free. So,
mhm.
like, what do you think? What's our headcanon for what happens to the human that's waiting for their debt to
I
be
think
worked off?
I think they're effed because the the like universe that this is set in is like very like extreme late stage capitalism, like corporation, like there's really no government to speak of. Corporations control everything. Corporations actually like operate almost like nation states
Mm,
within this sci-fi universe. And so I have to assume those debts haven't been paid. That sleeper got away. I think that person's just stuck in storage somewhere. I don't think that
yeah.
corporation is like, oopsie, go let him out. Like maybe best case scenario, the corporation just makes a new like copies the consciousness over again and like makes a new
Mm,
sleeper to continue the contract. Question mark. I guess they would be incentivized to do that to some degree, but I feel like they would add the cost
damn.
of the escaped sleeper to like the bill that the person owes. In fact, I
Damn.
feel like that's my headcanon. They probably just
Yeah.
create a new sleeper, but they charge the person for the parts and
Mm,
labor.
damn.
Yeah.
Man, I want, like, a whole book series on this world. It's a really
Yeah.
fascinating
It is. Yeah, it's really fascinating world building.
setting.
Excuse me. But both games gotten high praise from critics, with Starward Vector currently sitting an 85 on OpenCritic, which I'm pretty happy about, having drafted
Mhm.
it for our Fantasy Critic League
Yeah.
draft. I'll take those 15 points. Thank you very much. And we really enjoyed the first game. We've spent time with the second. We both completed the second game. Let's get into it, Spencer.
Mhm.
How many hours did you play Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector? What did you play it on? And what's your high level take?
PS5, baby. I don't know why I've just been feeling I feel like I go through, like, waves of like, last year was all about the handheld. I was
Mhm.
just snuggled up with my Steam Deck every
Mhm.
day. Now
Well, now
I'm
you've got the
like
Portal.
I have the Portal, love her.
Mhm. The
And also
PlayStation
I've
Portal
been
for
kind of,
folks
like,
following along at home.
really into the holding a controller in my hand like a gamer and playing it on the television. I don't know why. So I got it on PS5. I think there was a sale for PlayStation Plus, although we've established that I am a privileged premium owner, so I don't know
Yeah.
which tier.
Yeah, no, there was
But
a sale, but the game also was, quote unquote "free" on Game Pass.
oh, yeah, Game Pass, so there you go. Um, people still use Game Pass? I'm
That's how
sorry.
I played it. Thank you
Uh,
very much.
um,
But yeah, like
anyway,
Xbox really doesn't care about exclusivity anymore. Like
yeah,
it's really
the
just
times are
my
changing.
Game Pass machine. I'd rather pay
Mhm.
a monthly fee and than buy the individual games. But
It's basically free. It's like girl math. Like I'm not paying for it right
yeah,
now, so it's free.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I'm just like dragging everyone today. I played PlayStation says I clocked in at around 12 hours. But we also established between the two of us that I am like an extreme speed reader, and this game is a
Yeah,
lot of
Spencer reads very
reading.
fast. A lot of
And it's
reading.
like I'll just be like next, and my partner was watching me play, and he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait! What did that
Yeah.
person say?"
Yeah, it's not an easy game to like play with somebody because it
Yeah,
is very reliant on your reading speed.
on your personal reading speed,
Yeah,
yeah.
which mine is slow as molasses. So I clocked a whopping 22 hours. Although I did say I feel like that's probably more like 18 or 19 hours because of the sheer amount of time that I was want to like put the controller down and pick up my phone
Mm,
and like look up from the screen when my controller disconnected from the Xbox and be like,
mm,
oopsie, there went
yeah.
45 minutes of my evening.
See, I don't know, maybe it's the ADHD, but when I am playing a game, I, like, lock in. It's like, I look at the clock and it's like
It depends
like,
on the game. It totally depends on the game.
uh,
Yeah, that's the goal. The goal is to lock in and hyper focus and forget everything else in the world, but doesn't always happen or sometimes it takes some time to get there.
gotta turn that do not disturb mode
I do my
on.
best locking in between like 11:30 at night and 2 AM, which is
Mm,
not good for my sleep schedule.
yeah. That's the main time that I text you.
Yeah, that's why I'm
Lately.
up. I'm fucking locked in.
Anyway, what's my high level take? It's funny, I didn't the first game was not my favorite game.
Oh,
It was
really?
I wanted to like it more than I did. I'm curious, I never go back and listen to podcast episodes. Like, as soon as the
Yeah.
podcast is done recorded, I'm like, "Well, that's out of my brain now. Hope I said something okay." But I don't like to, like, hear myself or anything. So, like, I don't know what I said, but, I'm curious. No, maybe someday. But I found it very difficult to I had a really hard time understanding the mechanics and, just following the story. So this time, I when I first started the game, I remember for a long time I was like, "You know what? I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna trust the process because like, there's a sequel, so enough people really enjoyed this game that there must be something here."
Mhm.
And there's definitely a learning curve to this game. I think it helped me to realize that, like, a lot of the descriptions of the game, uh, talk about it being tabletop inspired. Um, and I think the feeling that it elicited in me was very similar to the feeling I have learning a new complicated board game, where
Mhm.
it's like the first 45 minutes, I'm like, "I don't know this is gonna happen." And then something just kinda clicks, and I'm like, "Ah." And that happened with this one. I think the
Okay.
first couple hours, I was like, "I don't know about these dice." We'll get into that, but I was like, is this game supposed to be incredibly difficult? Am I supposed to be, like, just squeaking by the skin of my teeth? And I think over time, as I started to appreciate the narrative and story more, I realized actually, yes, I think there is supposed to be a feeling of risk. There is supposed to be this feeling of we're barely making it to the next day and we're going to survive and it's going to be okay, but it's not going to be easy. You're not going to be over leveled. You're not going to be like building up your armor and stats to be OP and you're not going to be like killing everything in sight. Like it's going to
Mhm.
be a struggle. And that's what makes this game interesting is that it is a struggle from start to finish and you feel a real sense of like accomplishment when you manage to get through an encounter.
Mhm.
Um, but something I think I finally understand the dice system now,
Cool.
and that allowed me to be like, actually, this is awesome. So I don't know, maybe I'll go back and play the first one again. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a lot of reading, so I think for some folks, it's a
Yep.
real, acquired taste, like, if you're getting into this thinking it's mostly RPG, I feel like it's also a lot of, like, visual novel vibes, so just don't know
Mhm.
that going in, but if you're able to embrace that, then I think it's a really singular experience and a very special game.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So similarly or not similarly, I played on Xbox, like I said before. Um, I already talked about how many hours, like, I think real game clock is probably like 18, 19 hours. So it did take me longer than you. And I think a lot of that does just because Spencer was like, oh no, did I miss a bunch of content? We kind of like compared notes a little bit. And
Yeah,
I don't think you did. I think is really just the difference between you reading a million miles an hour and me
yeah,
being like a slower reader. I also like I find I have to like kind of reread things sometimes just for
Mm.
comprehension. And especially with it being on, the TV screen while I'm sitting on my couch. They did thankfully have the ability to increase the text size, the font size on the screen. So I was able to do that and make it a little bit easier. But yeah, just generally like there's a big difference between being able to like lock in a book that you're like holding in your hands versus locking into something that's happening on the TV across the room from you. So um, just yeah, made for it being a slightly slower experience for me. I played the first game on PC. I think we might have both played it on PC, actually, which was
Mm.
easier to lock in with. Though it's not my preferred way to play games generally. I am grateful that this came out on all the platforms at the same time. Um, my high level take for Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. Interestingly, I don't think I like this as much as I like the first one. And I think we'll get into why that is. That though does not mean that I did not like this game. I did like it quite a bit. I think it's really good. There's just some stuff about the first one that I like better. Although there is some cool stuff that they do in this. And I'm kind of yeah, I don't know. Let's start getting into it because
Mhm.
I don't want to like have to rehash things. But I think my
Yeah.
overall take is that this was really good. But I think in some ways not as it lost some of the things that I really dug about the first game, while
Mm.
introducing some new stuff that I'd kind of be interested to see them take further in the future. So this game is
So
all themes. It's all it's like very big themes, I would say, of we talked about the world is like very set in this super late stage capitalism. You're surviving on the fringes of like settled space.
Mhm.
But everything has a lot of history to it. It's all kind of abandoned relics of the capitalist expansion is what people like make
Mhm.
their lives in. They're using ships that used to be made by different companies. The Sleeper themselves are an android made by a company called SNR that I don't think I'm trying to
Exist
remember from the
anymore?
first game. Yeah, I don't think SNR is they're either not as powerful or they don't exist anymore.
Mm.
Um so everything has kind of got this it's humans like trying to survive in kind of the bones of what
Mhm.
was there before while still existing on the fringe of a very active like war that's happening between the current corporate powers that be,
Mhm. Mm.
and using technology and stuff that those corporations manufactured but trying to adapt it to their needs, and always kind of like keeping a distance from and staying one step ahead of the war and the encroaching, like, capitalist entities. So it's people kind of, like, trying to survive on the fringes of capitalism.
Yeah, I like the focus too on with the technology itself, this idea of because technology was created by, fabricators with capitalistic intent, there's this constant undercurrent of planned obsolescence and the technology inherently on a path to falling apart. And so, like, trying to stay ahead of this body that's continuously, or these materials that are continuously disintegrating and falling apart. And how do you kind of retain any sense of self when your body itself has to have its parts constantly replaced and updated. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think that particular theme, if we wanna get into it a little bit about the sleeper and what their relationship to their body is. So, um, to just explain a little bit more about the kind of the premise of this game and the sleepers in general. The sleepers, they are the consciousness of a real human person who's in cryogenic storage somewhere. However, they've had their human memories wiped. So they don't have the same memories, but it's kind of unclear to me like what exactly they keep from
Mm.
their human counterpart in terms of personality or anything like that. I guess you could say that you as the player are kind of role playing that. And then there are like moments in this game, and I think moments in the previous game where you had memories of like a cat, for example. Like you
Mm, mhm,
remembered what a cat was, you remembered what it was like to pet a cat and to have a cat purr. But you remember it was like a memory that was clearly like from Earth or from like an actual settled planet. So it was like a memory that that had somehow been preserved in the process of transferring the consciousness into the sleeper, even though it should have been deleted, that you're still holding on to. But mostly, the sleepers don't have the memories of the human whose consciousness they've been imparted with.
Yeah.
So they have some essence of that person, but they don't actually know their own background. So you start both of these games from like a really kind of clean slate in terms of like who you are as a character, and then they let you the game lets you fill that in with role playing. In the first game, uh the sleeper is still dependent on the substance called stabilizer, which is a like a medical injectable
Mm.
that as part of this planned obsolescence that you're referring to, when SNRP designed the sleepers, they made them physically reliant on stabilizer. Without regular doses of stabilizer, the sleeper's body begins to break down. And that's just like it's a control mechanism for the company, right? To keep sleepers from leaving, they have to stay. SNRP is the provider of the stabilizer, so they can't just fuck off and leave. They've got to stick around, so they keep getting the stabilizer so they continue to be able to function, and their body doesn't collapse around them. Uh, and a big part of the first game is because you are an escaped sleeper, you're trying to find other ways to get a hold of stabilizer, and that's a constant grind in the game. Like, you constantly have this timer of when you're gonna need your next dose of stabilizer and trying to figure out how you're gonna find it. First game takes place almost entirely on one space station, and you're just trying to exist on that station in this constant grind for stabilizer, and eventually part of, like, the arc of the game is finding a way to exist without stabilizer. That's part of, like, your freedom journey in that game. It's
Mhm.
how do you get free of this medical reliance on stabilizer? This game, removes the stabilizer mechanic completely. You start the game as a sleeper who has been, working for this, what's essentially like a
Like,
criminal gang,
organized crime.
organized crime, um, and you've already been broken out of like, you had escaped from SNRP already. You got taken in by this organized crime gang, and they have basically been controlling you by
Yeah.
meting out stabilizer to you and saying like, "Okay, well, you're away from them. We'll protect you. We'll give you your stabilizer, but now you work for us." But the game starts with this scene of you doing a reboot to make yourself no longer reliant on stabilizer, and actually caught like something goes wrong with the reboot, and you lose your memories. So even your memories that the sleeper character had developed prior to, um, or like in their time as a sleeper, are wiped again. So you still start with a clean slate as the player,
Mhm.
um, but you're no longer reliant on stabilizer right from the beginning of the game. But instead, it introduces this narrative of now the sleeper and their friend Seraphin are on the run from the criminal organization. They're trying to make their break from them, and uh, the sleeper is being due to manipulations that Lane, who is the leader of the criminal organization, had done to them while they were with the criminal organization, and through the stabilizer that Lane was giving them. Um, they're slowly losing control of themselves, of their body. So it's more about like slow deterioration than
Mhm.
reliance on a substance. And so people
Mhm.
have read and do read these games as like metaphors for different types of disability or different health conditions. Like, a lot of people who played the first game saw a lot of similarities in that story to what they've gone through with their reliance on different medical uh, devices or
Mhm.
medicines, um, as part of their own disability. And I think in this game, you could draw a lot of parallels to what it might feel like to be deteriorating at end of life, or due to a debilitating disease, or even like there was some stuff that kind of reminded me of like narratives about losing yourself to oh my god, what's the word that I'm looking for? Um
Like
oh
memory loss
yeah,
or
yeah, like memory
cognitive
yeah,
stuff?
yeah, loss of cognitive ability. I don't know, Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
like, what that experience might be like to slowly lose yourself over time.
It's
Yeah, go ahead.
interesting because I feel like, something that it triggered for me was because from the beginning of the game, you are running from this person, Lane, who has made you dependent on him and has done something to your body where you are able to literally hear him speaking to you in your mind. And he is slowly, even from a far distance, able to take control of your body, and your body is no longer your own. Um, so I don't know, content warning probably, just around um, abuse and assault. But as someone who's been assaulted and someone who's been in an abusive relationship, a lot of what it triggered for me was like something that a lot of assault survivors go through is this feeling that of like depersonalization, like your body doesn't belong to you. It doesn't matter. You have no control over yourself. Like at times you can totally sort of dissociate from your body and not even feel like it's yours anymore. Um, and I think a lot of the themes that it brought up for me were like there would be scenes where this fucking man would be popping up and being like,
Yeah.
you're mine. I'm gonna control you.
Mhm.
And you would start, you would realize that like you're in your body, but it's not yours. And so like a lot of it was all for me at least was around sort of surviving those kinds of dynamics, overcoming them, and the trauma of sort of that total lack of control.
Mhm.
And how hard it can be to sort of reclaim your body when you go through something like that. So um all of those reads are super interesting. I hadn't really thought about it from that angle until just now, but yeah, that
Yeah.
resonates.
Yeah, that's a cool read. Or I don't know.
Wow.
Cool
I
read.
was
Maybe
gonna-
it's not the you know what I mean.
yeah.
That's an interesting read. It's interesting that you got that out of
Glad it's
it.
cool to you. I'm totally fucking with them.
Yeah. No, I know. I am sorry you went through that. Thank you for sharing. Uh just totally derailed me. What do you want to talk about next? So anyway, a lot of this game then comes down to the writing of
Yes.
the line by line writing. Something that really stood out for me in the first game. I remember taking loads of screenshots. I was like so into the way the original
Mhm.
game was written. There were so many just beautiful uh paragraphs. Like I have screenshots and screenshots of quotes from the game. I did not find myself doing the same thing with Citizen Sleeper 2, which
Mm.
is not that I think it was written poorly. I don't think it was. I think in particular the representation of the characters is really strong. I love all the different cast of characters that they surround you with as the player in this game. The dialogue between them I think is written really well. And just
Mhm.
plot wise, I think the way the game plays out is really interesting. However, I did find myself getting hung up on, like, certain phrases that were repeated a lot throughout the game to the point where Spencer and I were, like, jokingly texting each other of, like, a list of things that you could turn
A
into a
drinking
drinking
game.
game
Yeah.
with this and just be totally obliterated, like die of alcohol poisoning. The
Mhm.
one in particular that jumped out to me was there were a lot of times where, the game references characters touching the sleeper's shoulder,
Mhm.
and I suppose that it was a device to, ingrain you're working in a space where just in terms of how the game's presented, if you've not seen it, a lot of the game is text on a screen with just a static drawing of the character on the screen. Like, there's basically, there's no cutscenes, there's no animation of characters on the screen at all. You very rarely will see animation of, like, the ship moving, but mostly, like, there's no animated, like, things are moving around on the screen at all. No representation of the things that are happening. It's all in the text. So it's a tough feat, but and they do a really good job of it. Like it's still super like I have great visuals of like who these characters are and the action that is happening. So to some extent it's like okay, the hand on the shoulder thing like they're trying to get you to connect more with these characters by showing how much they're connecting with you. But every single fucking character is grabbing my fucking shoulder all the goddamn time. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, in real life, I don't think people put their hands on each other. this
Yeah.
much. And it just
Yeah.
felt, it started to feel like a trope, and also started to really take me out every
Yeah.
time I read that specific line of like, they squeezed your shoulder, they put their hand on your shoulder. And I'm like, why is everybody fucking touching me all the goddamn time? Like, keep your hands to yourself. Like, I just met you. Stop touching me.
We're not we're not cool like that.
We're not cool like that yet. We're not cool like that yet.
You
I don't
know,
know. What did you think of the writing?
it's funny on that. Well, first I'll say, yeah,
Yeah.
there were quite a few kind of tropes, I suppose, or refrains. There was a lot of
Yeah.
shoulder touching, a lot of eyes flicking, a lots of, deep sighs, and they're all in a lot of the time you're in 0 gravity. So there's a lot of, like, pushing off the wall and gliding, lots of gliding past and gliding up and gliding down. Um, so there's that.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's funny, I've sort of been there's this around the shoulder touching thing. It's like, I think for me as a trans person, I'm like playing this game and I'm like, we're hundreds of years in the future and people are still seem to be super caught up on the fact that sleepers are human beings in uh technologically advanced bodies. But there's almost this like assumption that as a sleeper that I'm totally asexual. Like there's no kind of hint of desire felt from humans towards sleepers, which is just sort of strange to me because this is a world where AI is so sophisticated that you're able to have conversations with them and relationships that are basically indecipherable from the type of way you communicate with a human, and you're telling me that no one's trying to, like, hook up with a sleeper ever? Like, to the point where even and we can get more into some of the dynamics later. I know we're just talking about the writing itself right now, but there's a character
Well,
that
I
you
get into what you want to get into. It's, yeah, don't have
I
an
mean, so
agenda.
you like, your companion, Seraphine, is someone that you escape, from your, imprisonment with this crime
Yeah,
organization
he was also
together.
imprisoned by Lane. The two of you like planned your escape together.
Yeah.
You're clear, even though you don't have a memory of your relationship with him, it's very clear that he feels very close to you. And actually,
Mhm.
like, sorry, I'm interrupting you now a little bit. Give me two sentences.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like, I think the characterization of Seraphine and the way they establish that relationship is super well written. Like,
Yes.
he's a little bit of a dick, a little bit of like a gruff guy generally to most people. He's not
Mhm.
very trusting, and so by kind of creating that dichotomy between the way he treats other characters that you meet versus the way he treats Sleeper, it really like ingratiates you to him. Like I felt very close to Seraphine, even though I didn't have the memory of our shared history. And also like I felt sad. There's multiple moments where you feel sad that you don't remember what the two of you have
Mhm.
gone through together, and you can tell that he feels kind of bummed that you don't remember it either. But he understands it's not your fault. So I don't know. They do a really good job of setting that character up,
Yeah,
and you feel super close to him. But to your point, like it's
absolutely.
never presented as anything more than friendly, even though
Right.
the two of you clearly have a very deep like connection and friendship with each
Yes.
other.
Yes. And in fact, later in the game, it's totally taken off the table by the game,
Yeah.
in a way that I'm not gonna spoil, but it's like you know, I completely honor the validity of being asexual as someone who myself is grappling with, am I asexual? So like if this is not like a no one can be asexual thing, it's just that it's not even an option. It's not even
Mhm.
something to explore. It's just like any relationship you make, immediately it's this completely defanged, completely platonic, like shoulder touching is the furthest you're gonna get with any of these folks that you come across. And I just find it like a strange thing that still there's also you can tell there's lots of stigma around how people even view sleepers, like people are uncomfortable around you, people aren't sure how to relate to you, people feel weird when they look at your body sometimes, and it's like a lot of this is like very relatable to
Mhm.
be a trans person, especially as a trans person who doesn't always fit in Like, it's difficult sometimes for people when they look at me and they don't know which gender I am, and it makes them uncomfortable and upset. And it's like, I'm like, "What are you trying to say, game?" And
And therefore, you're just inherently unlovable.
yeah, like, and I don't at all think, and to be clear,
I don't
playing
think
this
that's an
game,
intentional message of the
yes,
game.
absolutely. I don't think that's an intention of the game. In fact, I think this game does a really excellent job of exploring the intersections between sleeper identity and people who identify as trans. And there's definitely queerness present. There's definitely neurodivergence present. There's lots of like disability inclusion and just general, like all the sorts of things that we've talked about. I don't think that this game is trying to say something like that about non-binary people or people who don't fit within an easy to define label. At the same time, I was sort of taken aback by just this immediate, what I felt was sort of like um, exclusion from at least my sleeper character from even considering or exploring what their sexuality looks like. And I don't remember if that was something that was present in the first game. Um,
It
but
wasn't by
yeah,
my recollection.
I think the shoulder touching, it was like, to me, it was almost, it became, and maybe it was just a matter of how often it came up, but it was almost like this infantilizing thing
Mm.
where because I don't have many memories, the assumption is that, like, is the assumption of people that I'm not able to consent or own my own sexuality? Like, is it just that, am I being treated like a child? This is a
Or
narrative-based game,
even
so
like
it's
an
like, I'm gonna
object.
an object, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
mean, there's a lot of folks who don't eh, there's a comment that Seraphim makes early in the game about you meet a different sleeper, or is that what it is?
mhm,
I'm trying to remember exactly what the scene setup is for it, but basically Seraphim makes a comment to you that, like, he immediately knew that you were a person because he could see it in your eyes.
yeah,
Um, but that's a thing that he hadn't experienced before with other sleepers that he had
mhm,
met, and so people do seem to be like, is your sleeper supposed to be especially unique? I don't think so, because you do meet another sleeper in the game who's
yeah,
just as much of a fully realized person as you are. Um, so yeah, it doesn't really, but people do feel some sort of entitlement to your body,
mhm,
in terms of like perceiving it. There's lots of little comments about people noticing like the tears in your metal skin or the damage
mhm,
that you've suffered. Um, yeah, yeah, I don't know. I the lack of any sort of romance or exploration of, like, gender, sexuality from the on the part of the sleeper, I agree with you that that felt like something that was both lacking um, and potentially, like, saying something that the game didn't mean to say. And
right,
I don't think that the first game had any of that in it either, but I feel like I clocked it less in the first game because the first game is so much about you just trying to survive day to day that trying to, like, even have those kinds of thoughts, I don't know, it just didn't feel as if it made more sense to me that we weren't trying to, um that we weren't building those kinds of relationships with people and that we weren't thinking about that kind of stuff because of the, like, real pressure on just our day-to-day living situation. And
mhm,
in this game, even though you're on the run from the very beginning of the game, there's way more, there's way less pressure on
mhm,
your day-to-day routine and existence, I think. The game
yeah,
finds a different way to build tension that I wanna get
right,
into here in a little bit through the contracts, but your actually
right,
day-to-day existence does not have that same degree of tension. And there's also the fact that a big part of the mechanics of the game is centered around this idea that you're building a crew on your ship.
yeah,
And so you are bringing people into your ship family
mhm,
that you are ostensibly seeing every day, that you are building close relationships with. They give you a lot of
yeah,
scenes with several of these characters, and I kind of felt like with some of them, it was like, it seems like this would be an opportunity for there to be something more here. Whether or
mhm,
not you wanted to give me a choice or if you wanted to just script something into the game, like, whatever, but it's not even commented on or questioned. It's just immediately assumed that the sleeper is a completely, like, genderless nonsense, like they're a Barbie doll, they're a Ken doll,
right,
they're just
right,
like a
like,
thing rather than a person, even though so much of the game is about exploring their personhood in so many other ways.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, and to that point, like, the game even makes a point to comment on just how much time is passing and how much time has
Mhm.
passed. Like, there's many references to, oh, all of these cycles. So cycles is like a day in game time. So it's like all of these cycles later, like you feel like you know so and so so much deeper, or like you can't you've come back to this place after so many cycles and you can't believe how much you've changed and how much you've stayed the same or whatever. So it's like it's insinuating that like weeks, months are like passing by. So I think that's what makes it especially strange to me that this is such an absent uh aspect of your character's identity exploration, because this is also such a there's so much trans allegory happening in this game, or queer or what have you. Like there's so much identity politics baked into the interactions in this game. You even have a conversation with a crewmate. I was looking down because I had taken so many screenshots, and there's a conversation you have with one of your crewmates where they talk to you about um, and something I appreciate too is the way transness is talked about in this game is not like, "I looked in the mirror and I realized I wasn't happy in my body and blah, blah, blah." But they
Mhm.
do talk about very real things. Your crewmate Bliss talks about, how they talk about how they traveled to the Belt, which is this space system. I don't know, science word, sorry, that
No, and,
you're
like,
in.
a lot of that stuff, it's like we're not dwelling on, like, where these
Yeah,
things are in relation to each other or any of that, so, yeah, anyway,
yeah.
yeah.
But they talk about, this is a quote from them. I came here, I realized this was my chance to become something new, so I let go of everything. It was messy, ugly, and the person I came here with, I let them go too. I was punching out at everything because it felt like everything was holding me back, stopping me for the change I was owed. This sentiment of having to let go of everything, including people you love very deeply, and needing to fully embrace this difficult um monstrous not monstrous because not monstrous because of who you are, but just how total this change can be and how overwhelming it can be. That's something that I definitely relate to very strongly, and I remember using those very words myself when describing the early days of my coming out to friends, of like I had to be prepared to let go of everyone and everything in my life, because even through the change I was going through, those relationships were going to look different. Nothing was going to be the same anymore. So that
Mhm,
really resonated.
mhm.
And your character talks about how this is now your character's point of view. It says, "You leave Bliss to their workshop, feeling reassured that you have them here on the ship. As you do, you think of your relationship to your own body, this frame that you were forced into that has never quite felt like your own. You realize that this feeling is not unique to you. No one gets to choose their body. Everyone has to contend with the entropy of their flesh." So it's like, we're right here.
Mhm.
Like, we're
Yeah.
talking about it. We're relating
Mhm,
to someone else who's going through the same thing. Why is it that that's where it stops and I'm not allowed to further bloom into myself and discover who I am? Even if the game were to take that choice away and be like, "I'm asexual and I have no desire to
yeah,
engage in that with others." Like, great. It's just, like, never brought up, and I think, as you said,
yeah.
it kind of contributes to this feeling that the sleeper is sort of objectified or inherently seen as, like, incapable of exploring that, and it sometimes literally feels, like, infantilizing.
Mhm.
So this all stemmed from the shoulder touch.
It's also for the shoulder touch, but yeah, it was a sticking point for me, and I think a complaint with this game more than it was with the previous game, uh, that there was no romance option, or there was no exploration of any of that. Um,
Mhm,
I and I would if we were to make a 3rd Citizen Sleeper, that would be, like, high on my list of things to
mhm.
ask for,
Yeah,
is to explore that a bit more, because there were definitely like, there's some scenes that you have, there's a particular scene with Bliss that just it felt like the way it's all described and the way they're, like, talking to you and engaging with you and touching you is, like, feels incredibly intimate, and I was like, "Oh, interesting, are we gonna go somewhere with this?" And, like,
yeah,
"N no, not really." Like,
mhm,
nothing more is gonna be done with that. So I don't know,
yeah,
yeah, it just felt weirdly lacking and, like, it was a thing and maybe it's intentional, like, maybe you are supposed to feel like, yeah, at the end of the day, though, everybody does kinda still just see you as an object, but I think it would've been cool to if that was intentional, to give us some sort of exploration like that,
Mhm.
where the sleeper maybe does try to put themselves out there, and the person's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like, I don't
Right.
I can go so far to see you as a human, but not that far."
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Mhm. Right. Right. Or even just if they are or if the sleeper themselves isn't interested in
Mhm.
in pursuing that with anyone, that
Yeah, the
too would be good
reverse,
to
like
just
someone
name.
yeah.
One thing I will say, you brought up Seraphin earlier and kind of his prickliness, but also the way that you grow to really love him and respect him as a companion. I will say something I did really like about the writing was the friction that was allowed to exist between the characters. Like there was
Mhm.
something about everyone that you were like, "Hmm, like,
Not
do
totally
I
on the same
trust
page
you?
about
Are we
yeah.
on the yeah, do we disagree?" Um, and I think in a lot of games, it's very obvious, like, in a lot of games where choices matter in dialogue, it's very obvious, like, which choice is the quote, unquote, "right choice," which one is gonna result in the quote, unquote, "good ending." And
Mhm.
I really liked how in these scenarios, there might not really be a right answer, and it's less about making the right choice and more about living with the choice you make and feeling conviction in why you made it. And so I really appreciated that and the fact that none of these characters felt like, lawful good.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, moral complexity and things are allowed to be kind of unresolved or not resolved in the way that everybody wants, but the story still continues.
Mhm.
I think that's a pretty easy way to transition into kinda a conversation about some of the mechanics and the stakes of the game, because something I
Yeah.
appreciate both about this game and about the original is kind of the lack of a fail state. The
Mm.
game, can set up, like, really intense scenarios where it does feel incredibly hard, you're rolling the dice, you're not getting the outcome that you want, and maybe things, like, just don't work out. You have to abandon a contract or you fail a roll and don't get the, like, quote, unquote, "best outcome." That never ends the story. It's not like, "Oh, well, you didn't do it, so game over." The story just adapts and continues.
Mhm.
Um, so talking a little bit about like kind of the dice mechanics and what's actually happening to build that tension. Just like in the first game, every day or every cycle that begins, you have I think five. Is it five dice?
Mhm.
And they roll. They're normal 1d6s or sorry, yeah, it's a normal like d6.
Mhm.
Isn't that what it's called? Where it's got
Yeah.
six sides. Um, they roll, they appear at the top of the screen, and those are your dice for this cycle, and they, have a number 1 through 6. Like normal dice, you have, like, kind of a chance of what to roll, and then you're on a screen that represents the space station or planet. It's I guess you don't really go to planets, but, like, asteroid or whatever,
Mhm.
the station that you're at for that cycle. And there's different nodes on the station that you can click on and engage with. And those nodes, when you open them up, they'll have different activities that you can apply dice to. So, for example, you might be on a station where you can do a job and you go to this node and it has a job there for you to do of like transferring data out of
Yeah.
something. And if you do this thing successfully, you'll get paid. There's an economy in the game, you make money. You also need to maintain a certain amount of fuel for your ship and supplies, to feed your crew. Um, so you go to that node, you click on that, it's got the job listed there. The job is gonna be tied to a specific skill. So you have 5 skills, that's kind of the RPG-ness of it. When you start the game up, you choose a character class for your sleeper, and there's 3 different classes. There's really nothing dramatically different about the classes in terms of, like, it doesn't change your dialogue options or anything like that, but it does change, each class has 1 skill that starts already at an advantage, and 1 skill that's completely locked out to that class. So of the 5 skills that exist on the skill tree, the class that you pick determines which one is locked out and which one starts at a boost for you. And then you'll get skill points throughout the game that you can assign to boost the other 3 skills that you have access to, and even like max out your skill that starts with a boost. What that boost does, it's like just represented by a plus or a double plus. And essentially what it means is anytime that you're applying a dice towards that boosted skill, it increases the number on the dice, either by 1 if the skill is boosted once, +1, or 2 if the skill is boosted twice. So, when you are applying dice to things, the number that you slot in affects it's still going to do a behind the scenes roll of the dice to determine if you are successful or not in the thing that you're attempting to do. But the number on the dice influences the probable outcomes. So for example, if you apply a dice that is a 6, you have a 100% chance of getting a positive outcome. If you apply a dice that is a 5, you have a 50% chance of a positive outcome and a 50% chance of a neutral outcome. If you apply a dice that's 2, I think it's like 50% neutral and 50% negative. If you apply a dice in the middle, like 3 or 4, I believe those break out to like 25% positive, 50% neutral, 25% negative. And so you put the dice in the slot and then you click the button to actually like do the behind the scenes roll. And then it tells you what the outcome of that is. So the skill determines whether or not that dice is getting any sort of boost from your skill set. Or in the case of like, if it's the skill that you don't have access to at all because of your class, it actually deducts numbers from the dice. So if I slot a 6 into a skill that I don't have any points in at all, it actually turns it into a 4 in terms of how it changes the potential probability. Then that outcome determines what happens narratively or in terms of the like the supplies and stuff that you get out of it. In the example I was using of like you're doing a job, if I get a positive outcome, that means I'm going to get probably more money than I would have gotten if with a neutral outcome. And I might even like gain some energy or another benefit. A negative outcome would probably result in me losing energy. You have energy that depletes each cycle that's filled by you buying and eating food, usually. Or if you're on a contract, your supplies use that up. And then a neutral outcome might have like 1 negative consequence and 1 positive consequence. I feel like I'm getting very in the
Like
weeds on this.
No, I mean, like,
is this making sense? Somebody tell me if this is making sense.
I think maybe other things worth mentioning about the dice is that your dice themselves have their own little health bars. So every time you use them, they start depleting.
Well, it's actually when you roll them for the day. When they roll for the day, certain numbers will cause damage to your dice based on your stress level.
Oh, see, I don't know anything. I'm just like, my dice.
Yeah, so you one of the negative consequences you can get from your dice rolls is stress. There's a stress meter at the top of the screen. As the stress meter fills, it highlights different numbers. So it starts with it literally goes in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But as your stress meter fills, so when you get to 1, that means anytime you roll a 1 at the beginning of the day, that dice is going to take damage. And the dice have like a 3 bar health system. If the dice takes 3 bars worth of damage, it breaks and is no longer available to you until you fix it, which you have to get a unique resource for to be able to fix. And then when you do fix it, it has like it fills a glitch meter. That means that the dice has a chance of rolling as glitched, which means it doesn't have a number assigned to it, but it automatically means that if you use it, you'll have an 80% negative
chance
outcome.
That
So
sucks
fucks your
when that
dice up.
happens.
Fucks your dice up. Yeah.
Okay, wait. I'm confused though because sometimes my dice would have one, like it's like the 3 health bars. It would have 1 health bar, and I would be able to use it a few more times before it breaks.
Yeah,
Okay.
because until you roll a number again that is causing it to take damage, it just stays stays with that health bar.
Gotcha. Okay,
That's
it's
where the
all
stress meter
coming
is coming
together.
in. That's where the stress meter is coming in because usually you're only filling your stress meter when you're on contract. So what I was describing before is what it's like when you're just in a daily cycle in the
Mhm,
game and you're on one of the hub worlds. But this game is really centered around the idea of you building a crew and taking contracts. So while you're on the hub world, you're talking to different people and you're trying to find work for your crew and you pick up a contract and then the contract is a whole other mechanism. You'll open a special screen that shows you where the contract is at, and you have to have a certain amount of fuel to be able to travel to the contract location. And you also want to have enough supplies to get you through the duration of the contract because when you're on the contract, the only food that you and your crew have access to are the supplies that you've accrued. So you'll take the contract, you'll see what it requires, you'll spend some time on the hub world building up your resources so that you can do the contract. Then you'll go out to do the contract. And when you're on the contract, you're locked into that location. You can't just fly away and leave the contract and
mhm,
come back. It's like a specific mission sort of thing that you have to stay at. When you're on the contract, you get to pick 2 members of your crew. So everybody that you bring onto your crew and that you bring into your ship, they all have their own skills as well. So usually you wanna choose crew based on your own skill gaps, like people who, you know, in my case, my class, did not have the endure skill at all. So I wanted to bring somebody who had the endure skill in case there was a task that required endure. They're gonna have better dice to apply than I am. They're not gonna be subject to that -2 hit. Your 2 crew members will roll 2 dice each at the beginning of each day too. And so when you're on the contract, it's a new location or whatever that has the little nodes of different activities that you need to do, and you're gonna go into those with your crew, and you're gonna try to work through them. But there's a tension that's created with the contracts that creates this time limit, and it's contracts are where
mhm.
you can build stress. Both your own stress you have a stress meter, your crew members have stress meters. If those get maxed out, they lose access to their dice. Um, and then there's also usually some sort of a stress meter that applies to the entire project, the entire contract. That might be, and that always ties to a narrative thing. So, like, there was one contract I was on where we were kind of on the edge of space that was being patrolled by a corporate drones. And so we only had so many cycles to get the work done before a drone was going to come near us.
Mhm.
Or it might be something like we went to this really derelict ship that's like about ready to just crumble into dust in space. And the more we keep fucking with things, the more stress we're causing to the ship, and it's increasing that stress meter. And if we fully stress it out, it's just going to disintegrate, and we're not going to be able to get anything from it. So stuff like that. But it's on those contracts that you're actually building that stress and causing damage to your dice. I don't think you build stress or cause dice damage when you're off contract. So that might have also been too why you would
Right.
see that like, oh, this dice has been damaged for like forever, but nothing else is happening.
You only build stress off contract if you so in addition to the stress meter, there's also, your level of hunger or supplies that you have, and so if you're off contract and you run out of supplies, like, I think it's called energy, you have, like, a 5-bar energy meter. If your energy's gone and you continue to do tasks, you gain stress because you're starving. So that's the only way to build stress outside of that, but yeah, it's like there's this tension created between the stress, the health of your dice, how many supplies you have, because when you're out on contract, you can't get more supplies until you go back to a base. So you're trying to race against time and try to get everything done while you still have dice, because you can't if they break, you can't repair them while you're on a contract either. So you better not break them, and you better not run out of food, and you better not
Mhm.
get too stressed,
Mhm.
just
All of
like
that
real
works
life.
super well. All of that works super well. I think it's really impressive how much how much all of those mechanics tie into the narrative, and then how much tension that the game is able to drum up from just like really simple screens
Mhm.
and text and just
Yeah.
applying these dice. It's one of the strengths of both games, really. And this Jesus Christ, Starward Vector is, I think, way more mechanically complex than
Mm.
the original Citizen Sleeper game was. There's no contracts in the original Sleeper. There's no use of crew member dice. I don't believe the glitch or the dice breaking stuff is in the first game. I don't even know if the stress mechanic is. I think you just have your energy level to maintain
Mm,
in the previous game, and then you're
mm,
constantly trying to get the stabilizer. So you're working with
mhm.
more,
Right.
under, like, more tight constraints in terms of there's constantly a clock on you in the first
Yeah.
game in a way that there isn't in this one. So the first game builds tension in a different way. Um, but yeah, they really introduce a lot of mechanics in this one. I think for the most part, it's all really, really good. It makes for a more engaging game overall.
Yeah. I did feel like, this is kinda what I was getting to in the beginning of our conversation, but, you know, you constantly need fuel and supplies to get from place to place, like, even to get, you know, to a base or to get to a contract. Like, you need a certain amount of fuel, and fuel costs money, and you need supplies to last you while you're out there, and that costs money. And so it would like, there would sometimes I remember there'd be plenty of times where I would be like, "Okay, I have, like, 10 cryo left," which is, like, the money in the game. Am I gonna buy supplies or am I gonna buy fuel? Because I really should
Mhm.
do this contract because Lane is after me, and he's gonna be here in 2 days. So I either need to I can chill here and get some money and buy fuel, or I can try to scrounge up enough to go on this contract, but I'm not gonna have any, like, backup money if I mess up this contract. It needs to be successful so I can get away to the next spot. It would often feel like I was making decisions that felt really immersive to, like, the situation that the
Mhm.
characters were in, and it never felt like I was too comfortable or
Yeah.
too safe. So I thought that was masterfully handled, like, you never felt like you were over-resourced at any time, and it
Yeah.
really felt like you needed to make really, strategic decisions about where to spend your resources and time. So that was cool. That
Yeah.
was really well designed.
And the creator of the game, just pulling their name up again real quick, Gareth Damian Martin has talked about, like, these some of the original conceits for this game coming from their experience, like, doing gig work.
Mm, mhm.
Um, and I think that it translates really well because there is like a when I would complete a contract and get 300, 400 cryo, I'd be like, oh, I'm like set now.
Yeah.
But just the speed with which you eat through that, and suddenly you
Mhm,
turn around and you're like, oh my fucking god, I got to do another job. I can't even buy enough fuel to go out and do this next job.
mhm,
It yeah works really well. Works really well. Um, I do think it maybe could have been tutorialized a little bit better. I know
mhm,
you alluded to, like, it feeling really tough at the beginning, and it does, and I think intentionally so. Like, the first couple contracts that the game sends you on as part of the story are, I think, really difficult to actually complete. The game wants to teach you right out the gate that, like, you're not always gonna be successful in what you're trying to do, but it can
mhm,
be a little bit discouraging. For someone who maybe isn't expecting that to be the way it goes or feel like you failed. And
mhm.
because the game auto saves too, like, there were a couple of points where I, like, went into the menu to see, like, "Oh, if I shut the game off, can I go back and do this again?" It's like, "Nope, it already
Nope.
saved." And I was like, "Well, fuck, like, the fuck? Like, what am I supposed to do?" But I think it's intentional, and I
Yeah.
ultimately worked through that. Although one big complaint I had about the tutorials that I think was a big mistake, they have these, like, little pop-up tutorial messages that appear that explain little things that are fucking timed.
You
That
better
drove
read
me that drove
fast.
me insane. I was like, "Why? Why?" It has a button, like, it has a button prompt on it, or it did on
Mhm.
Xbox, that I a button prompt so that you could close it, but you can only close it early. You have no option to just let the tutorial stay up so that you have time to
Right,
read and absorb it, and it
right.
took me, I think, a lot longer than it should have to
Mhm,
understand how all of those mechanics were interacting with each other because of the way that it was tutorialized, and it throws a lot of words and symbols at you right out the gate and just expects you to keep up with it, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
I definitely didn't at first for quite a while. It ultimately didn't
yeah.
affect the game or what I was able to achieve in the game, but it was an uncomfortable experience that I think could have just been handled a little better.
Yeah, like, aesthetically, the UI is very effective, but leaning heavily on iconography to communicate function is a slippery slope and
Mhm.
something that is difficult in any interface.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and that that was really the core of the what caused the learning curve for me, is that, like, it looked really immersive and cool. I did not know what was happening for a while, and it took a lot of repetition for me to understand, what I was doing and what certain controls were affecting, and even what symbols meant. Like, "Oh, that's those red circles are stress, okay. Oh, the dice, like, that's those little bars are my dice's health, and, oh, I see I didn't even clock that the dice were 1 through 6. I was like, "Okay, that symbol is good and that symbol is bad."
Oh no.
It's like I do think from an accessibility standpoint, some of the and even a lot of the text that was on the screen to describe functionality was incredibly small.
Mhm.
Um, and it was like, very thin weighted white text on like a gray background. Like it can be tough for I think for folks with certain vision needs. So like yeah, just from a literal design standpoint, I think some of the leaning heavily on iconography made for a tough uh experience there, but I eventually overcame it, although that would be my feedback as well.
Yeah. Um, is there other stuff that you would wanna see? I mean, we talked about the accessibility stuff, and we talked about, I don't know, just more exploration of sexuality and gender, with the sleepers in a future game. Like, would you want a Citizen Sleeper 3? And, like, is there other stuff that you would wanna see them do with a Citizen Sleeper 3?
I'd love to see some voice acting up in here.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's a big ask, but, like, I think also from an accessibility standpoint, it's tough. Like, you're basically reading paragraphs and paragraphs of text, and so, I hope that this series continues to be successful, and I'd love to see it fully voice acted for folks for whom reading is difficult, and just to continue to breathe more life into the characters. I saw you wrote in our notes. Sorry to peel back the curtain here, but in the notes for our episode, you wrote it would have been cool to utilize the crew members more outside of contracts. And I to
Yeah,
completely agree with that.
yeah.
Like I would have loved to have the opportunity to just get to know my crewmates, or even just talk to them in
Mhm,
between contracts, like
mhm.
like the crewmates that you brought with you on a contract. The next time you're at the base, it would be cool to kind of talk to them and be like, "Oh, so that was crazy, right? Like, how
Yeah,
are you doing?" Um, like even little interactions like that to kind of reward um choosing different crew members each time, so you can kind of like get to know a little bit more about them afterwards. Like that would be cool. Um, I those are two off the top of my head.
yeah,
Uh,
that second one that I wrote in our notes is a big one for me. I think that would be a big, next step. Like, yeah, I'd be really curious to see if you go back and play. I kinda wanna go back and replay the first one again, just to refresh myself on it, because I remember loving that one so much, and feeling just slightly less high on this one. I'd be curious to, like, revisit that and see if that still tracks. But, like, there's characters that carry over from the first game into this game. Bliss is in the
mm.
first game,
Oh wow,
and
I totally.
there's other characters as well. Yeah. And I had to kinda, like, remind myself. I was like, "This person, I feel like I remember this person,"
Mm.
and then looked it up and was like, "Oh, shit, yeah, they were this person that did this." Um, so even though the sleeper and, like, the overall narrative is not a continuation, like, they continued within this world. Anyway, I'd be curious if you go back and play it. But I really do think, it would have been cool, especially with so much of this game being about building your crew. Like, they clearly spent a lot of time in enhancing the, like, gameplay mechanics of the game, and, like, really thinking about what that meant in terms of, like, shifting up the narrative and having this crew-based thing and doing the contracts. But where I felt it was lacking was in the narrative piece a little bit with that, because once you recruit your crew members, each crew member has kind of like their own little like narrative that's part of their bringing them onto the team thing, and then their narrative kind of stops.
Mm.
And there's really no way to engage with them outside of that or to like build a relationship with them or anything, even friendship. So it would have been cool if yeah, when you have all these people are ostensibly living on your ship. When you go to port and you dock, there might be one or two characters who tell you, like Seraphin will usually tell you what he's gonna go get up to while y'all are in the port. But what the
Mhm.
rest of them are doing, I for the most part have no clue.
Mhm.
And if I'm going around on the space station and I'm encountering things that I don't have the skill set for, it would have been cool to be able to like have a crew member with me and maybe plug one of their dice in there or to bring them along to an activity that we could do together and that would open more dialogue options or more points of like us having discussion. Um yeah, I don't know. It just would have been neat to like flesh that out more and also would have let you flesh out your sleeper more.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
much as you're in the head of the sleeper and like making decisions as them, there still feels like there's a bit of distance between you and the main character of the sleeper. Like all the other characters feel super fully realized, and yet even though I'm supposedly role playing the sleeper, I don't feel like I really get to know who they are in the same way. And so I'd love
Mhm.
to see more of that in a follow up game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There was also something in this one that in the first one that this game didn't have, which I think is multiple endings. I don't want to get
Yes,
into
it does not have multiple endings. I just looked that
Okay.
up.
Okay. I don't wanna, like, spoil what the ending was or anything, but I don't think it's spoilery to say, like, the original game, there's a lot of different ways that game can end because 'cause you're kind of choosing what you want your future to be. And this game just all boils down to one ending, um, and that was surprising to me. Um, and I
Mm.
remember just, like, loving how cool all the various endings were in the first game, and how you got to kinda, like, set your sleeper up from that future. I guess, narratively, it, like, makes sense why they didn't do it with this game because of where it goes, and I think it's ultimately, like, very effective, but, it would be cool to see that branching element return to future
Yeah.
games. Because in
Yeah.
the first game, even, you could run into an ending, like, fairly early. You could find a
Mm.
way to, like, end the game, like, pretty early on, and then it would be like, "Hey, you've reached an ending. Would you like to go back and continue from where this happened?" And then you could just keep playing to see what the next felt more like a choose your own adventure in that
Mhm.
sense, and this, Citizen Sleeper 2 feels a lot more on rails.
Yeah, it's not more linear.
Yeah.
There's a cute little thing in this game where you meet this guy who can paint the outside of your ship,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
have, like, 3 options, I think, that you're able to unlock to
Mhm.
customize the outside of your ship. I'd love to just see the inside of the ship. I know that's kinda antithetical to the
Yeah.
whole thing where it's you only ever see the exterior of locations, and then all of the interiors happen through your mind's the mind picture painting that happens when
Mhm.
you read the
Mhm. Mhm.
description and the narrative
Your mind
storyline,
picture painting.
but I'd love to see a little bit more customization of my ship, like, I'd love to be able to make decisions about what's going on inside or, like, see a little bit more of what our quarters look like that we're all sharing. Because
Mm,
there's I
mhm.
mean, it's kinda like a clown car by the end of the game because there's, like, 7 crewmates with you at I think at its largest point,
Yeah.
and you're seeing this tiny ship, and you're like, "Where are they all going? We all in a big cuddle puddle in
Yeah.
the brig, or, like, what's
You'd
going on
basically
here?"
have to be. No wonder
So
everybody's just touching my shoulder all the time.
yes,
Literally sleeping on top of each other at night.
that's why they call it Citizen Sleeper. So I'd love to just see I'd love in terms of feature requests, I'd love to see even more, of that kind of base, customization, because
Mhm.
that was just a fun touch, so
Yeah. So do you recommend people check Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector out?
absolutely, and I do want a Citizen Sleeper 3. I think the world that it's in, like, it feels like my favorite sci-fi series,
Mm,
like a fiction novel that I just wanna keep reading, that I
yeah.
get to interact with. Like,
Yep.
I really want more of this world, and I want more about sleepers, I want more lore, I'd love to see some of these characters again because there were quite
Yeah.
a few storylines where it was like by the end of the game, you felt like you were helping facilitate the beginning of a story for one of your crewmates. And I'd
Mhm.
like to see where they go and what they find and what they
Yeah.
uncover and what they learn from the things we've sort of kicked off together.
Yeah.
Um, so it feels like, and even this the sleeper in this game, your character, it feels like they also it's like a story of becoming. It's not necessarily an ending even. Hope
Mhm.
that's not too spoilery to say, but, like, it doesn't necessarily feel like an end at the end of the game.
No,
So,
it's
yeah,
like it's uncertain. I
absolutely.
would compare the end more to like the spinning top at the end of Inception almost. The way
Yes!
they end this at a moment where it's like you're not quite sure what the future brings for the sleeper, but it's also it feels cathartic anyway for what they've gone
Mhm.
through, and they're ready
Absolutely.
to take the next step into the unknown,
Absolutely.
which is
So,
really
yeah,
beautiful.
it's a beautiful, rich tapestry that I think is very ripe for continued storytelling, so I
Mhm.
absolutely hope there is a 3,
Yeah,
and from
same.
everything and every way that the game has grown in this 2nd installment, mechanically and, even the scope of the story itself growing with new locations and the mobility it offers, like, I'd absolutely love to see that keep happening and for it to continue evolving,
Mhm.
and I absolutely would recommend it. It's a great story and a really unique form of gameplay. Like it's a very singular game. Like I can't think of something that's similar to it. If you're someone who likes tabletop or role playing games, but you don't want to sit down and learn Dungeons and Dragons, I think this is a great entry point to see if you would like more role playing style games that are dice based.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with you that people should check this game out. I think especially if you like the first one, I think it's a no-brainer to check out the sequel. And I would recommend both of them, although I do kind of stand by my assessment from earlier. I do feel like I feel like I was more narratively satisfied or just I just preferred the narrative of the original, a bit more than this one, and I felt like the writing in this one had a few more of those, like, little weird, with the repeated phrases and stuff, just things that didn't quite work for me on the writing level in this one. But I think it's clear that when the developers sat down to make a sequel, they wanted to make one that was more mechanically and gameplay interesting, and I think they checked that box for sure.
Mhm.
Like, mechanically, gameplay-wise, like, this game is far more complex, far more interesting and engaging on that level than I believe the first one was. So if we're teeing up a third one, I hope that they will take the time then to add that same type of complexity to the narrative and giving it more time. It just it felt like maybe the writing was the thing that got a little bit of short shrift in the development of the sequel, with more focus being on the all the new mechanics and stuff that they were building into it. And so my hope for a third would be that we'd maybe not make as much adjustment to the game mechanically. I feel like it's singing pretty good on that level, and put a little more effort into bringing back some of the narrative stuff that I think made the first one special,
Mm,
giving it more variety in terms of the ultimate path that you can follow in the story, and giving you more opportunity to embody your sleeper and build relationships with the other characters in the game. I think cool.
yeah.
But I do hope we see a third one. I think these are really special games, and I love the world. I agree with you there. All right, time is up for today's session of Pixel Therapy. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that listening to our thoughts and feelings gave you some thoughts and feelings of your own. If you want more Pixel Therapy, come check us out at patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can sign up for free to stay up to date on everything we have going on, including our weekly streaming schedule, or subscribe for as little as $2 a month, and you can snag that sweet monthly bonus episode that I mentioned at the top. Also, be sure to check out our Let's Play series, Pixel Therapy Plays, on the Pixel Therapy Pod YouTube channel. You can subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications every time we go live over there. And of course, you can also support the show by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and following us on Twitter at Pixel Therapy Pod. That stuff is just as important, and we appreciate it just as much.
Finally, since we like to put our money and our energy where our mouth is, we end every episode with a recommended side quest. This week, want to spotlight again the Trans Defense Fund Los Angeles. It is a network of mutual aid resources and information about ways that you can help community members and help distribute safety kits to trans folks across Los Angeles. Um, it's Folks are still recovering from the wildfires earlier this winter in LA, and trans folks across the country could use your help and support in this time. So you can check them out at transdefensefundla.org or on Instagram at transdefensefundla. Again, that's transdefensefundla.org.
Thank you for that side quest, Spencer. That is our show for today. So go forth, run a story mission, level up some stats, and don't forget to hug an NPC every now and then. We'll be back soon with some more
Pixel
Pixel
therapy.
Therapy. Bye bye.